WWE is shaking right now. At WWE Night of Champions, the very core of the Bloodline was rocked, and the fallout is only just beginning. In a stunning turn of events, Solo Sikoa defeated Jacob Fatu to capture the United States Championship. But it wasn't without controversy. The outcome was shaped by a brutal ambush from Tangaloa, and the jaw-dropping debut of a new enforcer, the towering and dangerous Hikuleo. Just as the shock settled and the celebrations began, the air shifted. The tribal chief returned. Roman Reigns stormed the arena and came face-to-face with his younger cousin. The tension? Palpable. "You think that title makes you the head of this family?" Roman said coldly. "I built this. Don't forget who you are." Solo didn't flinch. "I didn't forget," he said. "I just stopped waiting." Now, with the Bloodline in shambles and power shifting faster than ever, the question looms, is this the start of a full-scale civil war inside the dynasty? Hit like, subscribe, and stay locked in. WWE's most dominant family is tearing itself apart, and it's only getting uglier from here. What if I told you, the greatest wrestling empire of the modern era isn't being torn down by its enemies, but by its own blood? Imagine this: the lights dim. The arena is on fire with tension. One brother has just fallen. A cousin stands tall, soaked in sweat and fury. Cameras zoom in. You expect celebration. You expect dominance. But what you get is fear. Because he is back. Roman Reigns. The tribal chief. And he's not smiling. For 3 years, the Bloodline ruled WWE like warlords, untouchable, strategic, devastating. Pay-per-view after pay-per-view, Roman Reigns stacked bodies and racked up titles like trophies. The Usos were loyal assassins. Solo Sikoa was the quiet executioner. Paul Heyman was the scheming oracle pulling strings in the dark. But like every empire, this one got too big. Too heavy. Too reliant on fear and silence. And on June 1st, at WWE Night of Champions, the silence broke. Solo Sikoa stepped into the ring not as a side piece. Not as Roman's errand boy. Not even as the enforcer. He stepped in as a man on a mission, to dismantle everything the tribal chief built. The opponent? Jacob Fatu, his own cousin, freshly arrived, red-hot, and carrying the kind of fury that turns family into footnotes. This wasn't just a match, it was a message. This wasn't about the US Championship, it was about territory. The crowd thought it would be a coronation for Fatu, the most dangerous free agent in years. What they got instead was betrayal. Ambush. Power play. Chaos. Tangaloa, a figure from another kingdom, stormed the ring. And then, out of nowhere, Hikuleo appeared, towering, cold, precise. They dismantled Fatu. They handed Solo the victory on a silver platter. Not earned. Taken. The camera lingered on Solo as the ref raised his hand. No smile. No joy. Just fire in his eyes. And then? Everything stopped. Roman Reigns' music hit. If you've watched WWE for more than 5 minutes in the last 3 years, you know what that theme means. It's not just music, it's a battle hymn. It means someone's about to get checked. It means the chief is coming down from the mountain to re-establish dominance. Only this time, something was different. He didn't look like a king reclaiming his crown. He looked like a man facing betrayal, and about to make someone bleed for it. Roman stormed the ring. Solo stood his ground. No flinch. No backing up. The US title rested on his shoulder like a badge of war. The crowd couldn't believe it. Cousin facing cousin. Brother facing brother. The air was thick with history and heartbreak. This wasn't just another Bloodline promo. This was the cracking of the throne. You think that title makes you the head of this family? Roman said, low and sharp. Every word hit like a brick. And Solo? He didn't blink. didn't stutter. He just said, "I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting." Boom. Silence. Not a word from the crowd. Just stunned faces. Because in one sentence, Solo didn't just respond, he declared war. Let's pause. This isn't just good storytelling. This is the turning point. The moment where everything changes. The Bloodline storyline has been slow burn brilliance, full of nuance and family drama and psychological warfare. But for the first time since it began, there's no ambiguity anymore. Solo Sikoa has declared himself outside Roman's rule. He's not looking for permission. He's not asking for leadership. He's taking it. And that should terrify everyone, including Roman himself. Why? Because Solo isn't alone anymore. Tanga Loa and Hikuleo don't just show up randomly. They're part of a greater family, the Inoue dynasty, same bloodline, different agenda. And if Solo's actions are any indication, there's a civil war brewing inside that dynasty. One that could consume everyone in it. What makes this story so compelling isn't just the twists, it's the stakes. For years, WWE booked the Bloodline as the final boss. Other superstars weren't just opponents, they were sacrificial lambs. But now? Now we're watching a power vacuum. Roman's been gone for months. The Usos are scattered. Jay disappeared. Jimmy was exiled. And in that vacuum? Solo rose. No words. No big promos. Just pain. Just action. The kind of rise you don't notice until it's too late. And now, with that US title over his shoulder and a growing army behind him, Solo isn't just trying to make a statement. He's making a move. If you look closely, WWE didn't just let Solo win, they let him win dirty. That's not an accident. They're telling us something. In the past, Roman fought clean when he could, cheated when he had to. He manipulated others into doing his dirty work. But Solo? He didn't manipulate. He weaponized his family. He recruited. He ambushed. He dismantled. It wasn't clever. It was ruthless. And that ruthlessness? That's the mark of a different kind of leader. One that doesn't want the crowd. Doesn't want the belt for show. Just wants control. That should scare Roman. Because Solo doesn't want to replace him. He wants to erase him. Now think about this, Roman Reigns is still the undisputed champion. Solo is now the US champion. Jacob Fatu is injured and humiliated. Hikuleo and Tanga Loa have crossed into WWE territory. The Usos? Silent. There's only one word for what's coming, civil war. Not in the traditional WWE sense. Not a triple threat match at the next PPV. We're talking long-form, Shakespearean betrayal. Brothers picking sides. Blood relatives tearing each other apart. Months, maybe years, of this story unfolding piece by painful piece. And it all started with one stare in the ring. One quote. One line that changed everything. I just stopped waiting. Why you should watch every second that follows. If you've been following WWE for the past decade, you've seen big moments. You've seen shockers. You've seen Cena rise, Bryan defy, Lesnar destroy. But this? This is different. This is Game of Thrones in a wrestling ring. Because it's not just about belts anymore. It's about power. About family. About legacy. It's about which son of this great dynasty carries the future of the Inoue name, and which one gets cast out like yesterday's news. Solo isn't just going after Roman's title. He's going after everything Roman represents. And that's where our story begins. Hit like. Hit subscribe. And stay tuned, because the Bloodline isn't just cracking. It's about to explode. June 1st, WWE Night of Champions. An event built on prestige, legacies, and seismic shifts. But this time, the shift wasn't a championship changing hands or a debut stealing headlines. It was a fault line deep inside the most dominant family in wrestling. And it broke wide open. The lead-up was already tense. WWE had teased something big. The Bloodline had been too quiet. Roman Reigns hadn't been seen in months. Jey Uso had disappeared. Jimmy had been excommunicated. Solo Sikoa stood as the last remnant of what once looked like an unshakable dynasty. Fans speculated endlessly, was this the beginning of something new or the final nail in the coffin? The card was stacked, but the match that had everyone buzzing was Solo Sikoa versus Jacob Fatu for the United States Championship. A fresh match. Fresh blood. Both men bound by ancestry, but divided by direction. The Inoue family roots run deep, spanning generations and promotions across the globe. This match wasn't just about a title, it was about dominance. Identity. Authority. Jacob Fatu entered first. His arrival was electric. Not the kind of pop you give a beloved veteran. This was raw energy. Respect mixed with fear. Fatu carried himself like a storm. Unpredictable, brutal, unapologetic. The commentary team sold it hard, this man isn't just here to make a statement. He's here to make history. Fatu's run in MLW had made him a standout, an unstoppable force who blurred the line between controlled aggression and pure chaos. Fans who knew his work knew what he was capable of. WWE treated his debut like a main event moment, not a throwaway mid-card experiment. And the crowd ate it up. Then came Solo. No pyro. No theatrics. Just slow, methodical footsteps and that cold stare. The US title rested on his shoulder, but he wasn't flaunting it. He wasn't flexing for cameras. He looked like a man walking to war. There was no handshake. No show of family loyalty. Just two warriors in the ring, staring each other down like strangers. And from the bell, the match didn't build, it detonated. The first few minutes were stiff. No fancy sequences. Just power. They traded blows like they were trying to cave each other's chests in. Fatu hit a wicked Samoan drop that made the ring bounce. Solo answered with a spinning runnage that sent Fatu into the turnbuckle like a ragdoll. This wasn't a showcase, it was a demolition derby. But what stood out wasn't the violence. It was the silence. The fans were loud, but the commentary team grew quiet at key moments. As if even they didn't know what to say. As if something felt off. Not scripted. Not routine. Raw. And then it happened. Midway through the match, the tide turned. Fatu had Solo down. He hit the ropes. The crowd was rising. He went for his signature top rope moonsault, the move that had won him dozens of matches. He soared through the air, and missed. Solo rolled out just in time. Fatu landed hard. Clutching his ribs, he staggered to his feet. Then, chaos. Tanga Loa stormed down the ramp. Security barely moved. He hit the ring and delivered a devastating running powerslam to Fatu. The referee called for the bell, but the bell never rang. Before anyone could react, another figure jumped the barricade. Tall. Menacing. Calm. Hikuleo. Hikuleo didn't sprint. He walked. Slowly. Deliberately. His presence alone was enough to make half the audience stand. If you followed in JPW, you knew what this meant. If you didn't, it didn't matter, his look said everything. He stepped into the ring. Fatu, disoriented, tried to fight back. But Hikuleo grabbed him by the throat and delivered a chokeslam that left Fatu sprawled motionless in the center of the ring. Silence. Solo picked himself up from the corner. He looked at Hikuleo. At Tanga Loa. No nods. No smiles. Just eye contact. Then he turned, covered Fatu's lifeless body, and made the pin. 1. 2. 3. The bell finally rang. The arena erupted. Not in cheers, just sound. Shock. Confusion. Booing. Cheering. A noise storm that didn't know what it felt. Solo stood tall. The US title was returned to his shoulder. Tanga and Hikuleo stood behind him like war generals flanking a new king. It wasn't just a win. It was a takeover. What did this mean? Were these new allies? A splinter faction? A new bloodline? There were no answers. No promo. No explanation. Just domination. The camera cut to Fatu. Medics attended to him. He didn't move. The debut everyone thought would be a coronation had become a public execution. Fans weren't just shocked, they were confused. And that confusion was the point. The commentary team tried to recover. "I don't know what we just saw," one of them said. "But this changes everything." They weren't wrong. Backstage, speculation exploded. Tangaloa and Hikuleo's presence couldn't be ignored. They weren't random hires. They were part of the extended Anoa'i family. Distant cousins. Outsiders to WWE's internal bloodline, but with just as much right to the throne. Their alliance with Solo raised terrifying questions. Was this a coup? Was this the end of Roman's rule? Before anyone could process it, the lights dimmed again. Roman Reigns' music hit. People didn't cheer. They froze. He walked out with no pyro, no fire, just intensity. Every step Roman took felt like a thunderclap. He didn't look impressed. He looked betrayed. No Paul Heyman. No Usos. Just him. Solo stood his ground in the ring. He didn't look away. He didn't back up. Tanga and Hikuleo moved to his side, but Solo raised a hand. They backed off. This was between cousins now. Roman entered the ring slowly. His eyes never left Solo's. The crowd could barely breathe. This wasn't just tension, it was history colliding. The stare-down lasted a full minute. No mic. No music. Just two family members, once allies, now something else entirely. Then Roman spoke. "You think that title makes you the head of this family?" Cold. Quiet. Brutal. Solo didn't hesitate. "I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting." There are moments in wrestling that go beyond the story. That feel like the curtain dropped and the actor spoke truth. This was one of those moments. Roman stepped forward. Nose to nose. He didn't say another word. Solo didn't blink. The camera caught it perfectly, Roman clenching his jaw. Solo, stone-faced. The US title gleaming between them like a stolen crown. Then Roman turned and walked away. No attack. No fight. Just a storm gathering in silence. Night of Champions didn't end with fireworks. It ended with a war cry so quiet you had to listen to feel it. The Empire was cracking. And this was just the beginning. To understand how we got here, Solo Sikoa standing nose-to-nose with Roman Reigns, Tangaloa and Hikuleo invading the ring, Jacob Fatu laid out in a heap, you have to go back. Way back. This isn't just a wrestling storyline. This is a dynasty unraveling. And like all great falls from power, it didn't happen overnight. It was built on loyalty, fear, manipulation, and ultimately, betrayal. The bloodline wasn't born at WrestleMania or built in a creative meeting. It was forged over decades. Across continents. Across promotions. It started long before Roman Reigns ever walked through the curtain. Before Jey Uso ever cut a promo. Before Solo Sikoa even laced up his boots. It began with a name, Anoa'i. The Anoa'i family tree is vast. It's legendary. If you've watched wrestling at any point in the last 40 years, chances are you've seen someone from this bloodline perform. Yokozuna. Rikishi. Umaga. The Wild Samoans. Rosie. The Rock. And now, the latest generation, Roman Reigns, the Usos, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu. Different personalities. Different styles. One bloodline. For years, WWE never pulled the trigger on uniting this family into one story. There were hints. Tag teams. Promos. But no real movement. Then the pandemic hit. And something unexpected happened. Roman Reigns turned heel. It was August 2020. The Thunderdome era. No fans in the arena. Just virtual screens, piped-in noise, and uncertainty. Roman returned at SummerSlam looking different. Sharper. More focused. And he aligned himself with Paul Heyman, wrestling's most dangerous mouthpiece. That night, he declared he didn't just want to win titles, he wanted to control the narrative. And with that, the Bloodline was born. Jey Uso was the first to step up. He didn't want to fall in line. He fought. Roman beat him. Badly. At Clash of Champions. Then again at Hell in a Cell. Not just to win. To prove a point. To make him say the words, "I acknowledge you." Jey broke. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. That was Roman's gift, and his curse. He didn't just win matches. He broke people. Emotionally. Mentally. He didn't ask for loyalty. He demanded submission. Jimmy Uso returned later. He resisted too. Briefly. Roman crushed him emotionally, pulling strings like a maestro. Eventually, Jimmy joined. And for a while, the Bloodline was a fortress. They ran through WWE. Took out Drew McIntyre. Dominated Survivor Series. Unified tag titles. Roman held the Universal Championship with an iron grip, crossing 1,000 days as champion. No faction in the modern era had this level of momentum. But cracks always show. Sami Zayn was the first true break. Zayn joined the Bloodline as a comedic sidekick. The honorary Uso. At first, it was light-hearted. Then, it became something more. Sami, the outsider, started to belong. Jey hated it. Jimmy loved it. Roman tolerated it. Until he didn't. The turn came at Royal Rumble 2023. Roman ordered Sami to destroy Kevin Owens with a chair. Sami hesitated. Then, in a moment burned into WWE history, he cracked the chair over Roman's back instead. Everything changed. Jey walked out. Jimmy snapped. Roman broke Sami. And from there, the Bloodline stopped being about dominance. It became about survival. Jey Uso, the loyal twin, was now at war with his own family. Jimmy betrayed Roman later, super kicking him and walking out. Paul Heyman grew more desperate, whispering poison in Solo's ear. And Solo? He watched. He said nothing. He followed orders. But you could see it, week by week, something was changing. Solo Sikoa was the youngest. The most distant. He was brought in as Roman's enforcer. A quiet threat. A hammer in a world of scalpels. But silence doesn't equal loyalty. It just means you're thinking. And Solo was thinking. He watched his brothers destroy each other. He watched Roman punish dissent. He watched Heyman shift blame. He took it all in. When the Usos were out, when Sami was gone, when Roman had burned every bridge, Solo remained. Or so it seemed. But Solo wasn't staying out of fear. He was waiting for his moment. Let's talk about what made the Bloodline work for so long. It wasn't just talent. It was psychology. Roman manipulated with precision. He knew how to pull emotions from his family. He used tradition like a weapon. The phrase "I'm the head of the table" wasn't just a catchphrase. It was a dagger. It reminded everyone of their place. For Samoan families, especially those as historic as the Anoa is, hierarchy means everything. The chief provides. The family follows. In this story, Roman wasn't just a champion. He was the symbol of order. Breaking from him meant dishonor. But Solo? Solo didn't grow up under Roman's shadow. He wasn't molded by that pressure. He carved his path in NXT, came up quick, and learned to keep quiet and hit hard. So when the time came to choose, Roman or freedom, he didn't hesitate. But he didn't make it obvious either. That's what made his rebellion so devastating. It wasn't loud. It wasn't announced. It was surgical. First, he isolated himself. Then, he won matches his way. Finally, he recruited. Tangaloa. Hikuleo. Neither are WWE creations. They come from the New Japan Pro Wrestling system. They're outsiders in WWE but insiders in the greater Anoa'i web. If Roman built his army in the spotlight, Solo built his in the shadows. The moment he turned on the family wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a betrayal in the middle of a match. It was the calm acceptance of a new role. He didn't scream. He didn't monologue. He simply stopped waiting. Roman's empire didn't fall in a fiery explosion. It's crumbling like stone, one piece at a time. The symbolism is haunting. Roman built the bloodline on respect, fear, and silence. Now, those same weapons are being used against him. Solo doesn't need to shout. Tanga doesn't need to explain. Hikuleo doesn't need a promo. Their presence is louder than words. And where are the Usos? Gone. Broken. Absent. Jimmy tried to warn Roman. Jay tried to forgive him. Sammy tried to save them. All of them failed. Because the system wasn't designed for love. It was built on obedience. Solo saw that. And decided to burn it down. The fall of the Bloodline isn't a storyline twist. It's the collapse of the most powerful faction in recent WWE history. It's a masterclass in long-term storytelling. But more than anything, it's a family drama. Shakespearean. Tribal. Personal. Because what's scarier than a wrestler turning on his stable? A cousin turning on his blood. The dust hadn't even settled at Night of Champions before the shockwaves started spreading. Backstage, on social media, in locker rooms, everyone was asking the same question: what just happened? Solo Sikoa had walked out with the United States Championship. Jacob Fatu, the monstrous new force in WWE, had been ambushed and humiliated. Tangaloa and Hikuleo, two names previously outside WWE's control, had thrown themselves into the fray without explanation. And Roman Reigns? He walked away, tight-lipped, jaw clenched, his aura suddenly cracked. In real time, the WWE universe was trying to process the moment, but few understood the full gravity of what they had just witnessed. This wasn't a title change. This wasn't just a surprise debut. This was the beginning of a paradigm shift. And Solo? He didn't need a microphone to explain it. His expression said everything. He was done playing the role of enforcer. Done being the tool of someone else's legacy. From this moment forward, he wasn't a soldier. He was a sovereign. By the time WWE uploaded the match highlight package, the internet had already exploded. Clips of the final stare down between Roman and Solo were circulating with millions of views within hours. The quote, "I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting," was already being printed on bootleg t-shirts. Comment threads filled with speculation: was Solo forming his own faction? Were Tanga and Hikuleo under contract? Did Roman know they were coming? Official WWE accounts were silent. That silence only fueled the fire. Backstage reports started leaking. Some said Roman was furious, not in character, but behind the scenes. That his return had been planned for weeks, but he didn't expect it to be that. Others said he was playing along. That this had been the plan all along. To pass the torch not to a friend, not to a brother, but to someone capable of ripping it from his hands. But even those reports conflicted. Why? Because for the first time in years, WWE had managed to pull off something rare, real unpredictability. Every promo. Every graphic. Every backstage segment over the past few months had pointed to a story crawling toward resolution. Fans assumed Roman would return to either reclaim order or destroy what was left. They expected a speech. A call to arms. Maybe a new recruit. What they didn't expect was silence. What they didn't expect was Solo. The weeks following Night of Champions were charged with uncertainty. Monday Night Raw opened with highlights of the match, but no statement. No segment from Paul Heyman. No appearance from Roman. No post-match promo from Solo. Instead, WWE focused on commentary speculation. This wasn't a win, one announcer said. It was a takeover. The following SmackDown offered no clarification. Hikuleo and Tanga Loa weren't present. Solo wasn't booked for a match. But his image loomed large. Every promo break, every segment cut, every replay featured that post-match confrontation with Roman. And when the show ended, still no answers. The silence had become deafening. And then, the rumors started multiplying. One source claimed that Solo had refused to speak to Heyman backstage. Another said Jey Uso had been spotted in Florida training alone, ignoring WWE staffers. Reports emerged that Jacob Fatu had requested a rematch under fair conditions. Others insisted he was nursing bruised ribs and a possible concussion from the ambush. The sense of instability wasn't just part of the show, it was bleeding into the real world. For the first time since the Bloodline formed, no one seemed in control. And that's when the locker room started to notice. Superstars who had long stood in Roman's shadow began to ask questions. If the tribal chief can't control his own house, what happens to the rest of us? Does the title still mean what it used to? Is there even a bloodline left? The midcard felt the ripple immediately. Austin Theory, Sheamus, even LA Knight, guys who had been jockeying for a shot at the US title, were now on hold. They weren't just facing Solo Sikoa anymore. They were staring down a possible war faction with unknown reach. And Solo didn't offer interviews. Didn't sit for backstage promos. He just appeared, cold, violent, brief. On one episode of Raw, he interrupted a 6-man tag match between Imperium and the Street Profits. No warning. Just chaos. He didn't attack all of them. He took out Gunther with a Samoan spike, then left the ring. No comment. No context. Backstage, a producer reportedly asked him what the message was supposed to be. His response? There's more coming. By the end of that week, the Bloodline had gone from a crumbling dynasty to a ticking bomb. But the explosion wasn't loud. It was strategic. And then there was Paul Heyman. Heyman, for years, had been Roman's mouthpiece. His legal advisor. His sycophant. But now, with Roman silent and Solo ascendant, Heyman was caught in the middle. He tried to maintain appearances, publicly calling Solo's win a strategic evolution of Bloodline dominance. But his eyes told a different story. In one backstage clip, Heyman was seen on his phone, pacing nervously, muttering, "We didn't talk about this." He didn't say anything about this, before quickly turning away when a camera crew approached. His grip on the narrative was slipping. If Heyman was once the architect behind Roman's kingdom, he now looked like a man locked outside the walls. And still, no word from the Usos. Jey had been absent for weeks. Jimmy hadn't been seen since the infamous super kick that fractured the family. Their silence was starting to feel more intentional. Fans began asking, are they gone for good? Are they waiting in the wings for the right moment? Or have they chosen sides we just don't know about yet? One thing was clear, Solo wasn't waiting for them. His alliance with Tanga Loa and Hikuleo wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. They weren't part of the WWE bloodline Roman created. They were reminders that the real family tree stretches far beyond WWE programming. And Solo had tapped into that deeper power. Roman, for all his dominance, had only ever controlled the bloodline inside WWE. Solo was building something bigger. By the third week after Night of Champions, WWE programming had fully shifted tone. Every time Solo appeared on screen, the production slowed down. Camera angles held longer. Music stingers were used to build tension. Commentary walked a tightrope between fear and awe. And then it happened. Solo cut a promo. Not live. Not in the ring. Pre-recorded. Black background. Just his face. One camera. His words were short. I waited. I stayed loyal. I watched this family get torn apart, waiting for you to fix it. And you didn't. So now I fix it my way. That was it. No threats. No yelling. No ego. Just a man who'd stopped asking for permission. By then, the hierarchy was clear. Roman may still be the undisputed champion, but Solo was the one making moves. Not with contracts. Not with catchphrases. With action. And the question on everyone's mind, fans, wrestlers, management, was no longer what happens if Roman Reigns returns? It was, what happens if he can't stop this? For 1,169 days, Roman Reigns ruled WWE as the undisputed Universal Champion. He stood at the head of the table, untouchable, unchallenged, unbothered. Through WrestleManias, SummerSlams, and Survivor Series, he beat them all: Edge, Daniel Bryan, Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes. No one could break him. No one could dethrone him. But all of that dominance came with a price: silence. While Roman built a fortress around his power, the cracks inside that fortress were growing. And eventually, he stopped noticing them. Then he left. After WrestleMania, Roman disappeared. Not completely, he would pop in occasionally with Paul Heyman in tow, still flanked by Solo Sikoa, still holding the titles high. But the frequency of appearances dropped. The weight of his rule was no longer enforced by presence, but by memory. And in that memory, his kingdom slowly started to burn. Night of Champions wasn't advertised as a Roman Reigns event. He wasn't booked. No video packages hyped his return. WWE leaned into the chaos, choosing to let the new generation speak: Solo, Jacob Fatu, the Usos' ghosts looming in the distance. So when his music hit that night, after Solo pinned Fatu in the middle of the ring, it wasn't just a surprise. It was a warning. Roman Reigns was back. The moment is seared into memory. The arena lights went dim, and that now iconic music blared through the speakers. The crowd froze. Some cheered. Some gasped. A few even booed. But no one was silent. The camera cut from the ring to the entrance ramp. There he stood. Roman Reigns, wrapped in a black sleeveless hoodie, gold titles resting on each shoulder, eyes sharp. No pyro. No tribal necklace. No smirk. Just focus. He didn't look like a man returning to celebrate. He looked like a man who just realized the house he built was on fire, and the flames were licking at his throne. Solo stood in the ring, chest heaving, the US title over his shoulder. He didn't move. He didn't drop the belt. He didn't retreat. Behind him, Tangaloa and Hikuleo stood like sentinels. This was Roman's ring. But now, 3 men stood in his place. The walk down the ramp wasn't theatrical. It was surgical. Roman took his time, eyes locked on Solo. Every step was deliberate. There was no Paul Heyman. No Usos. No entourage. Roman walked alone. Because that's what kings do when they feel the crown slipping, they show up themselves. As he approached the ring, the commentary team went silent. The crowd dropped to a low roar, the kind of collective anticipation that precedes violence. The tension was unbearable. Roman climbed the steel steps slowly, entered the ring, and stood just feet away from Solo. Then, the unthinkable happened. He didn't raise a microphone. He didn't throw a punch. He just stared. It lasted 30 seconds. Maybe more. No music. No commentary. Just breathless silence. Then Roman spoke. "You think that title makes you the head of this family?" That's all he said. 9 words. But each one carried the weight of 3 years of dominance, betrayal, and blood. Roman had always spoken from above. From a place of superiority. Even when confronting opponents, there was always a tinge of amusement in his voice, like a lion toying with prey. Not this time. This time, there was something else. Cold. Tension. And maybe, just maybe, fear. Because Solo didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He didn't defer. He answered. "I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting." The line wasn't shouted. It wasn't delivered like a promo. It was quiet. Calculated. Like a man stating fact, not opinion. It hit harder than a spear. And for the first time in years, Roman didn't have a response. He stepped closer. His eyes flicked toward the U.S. title, then to Solo's face. It was the first time he looked unsure. Not beaten. But off balance. He'd expected resistance. He hadn't expected readiness. Solo was ready. For years, Roman had used family as leverage. He brought Jay into the bloodline by breaking him emotionally. He manipulated Jimmy by exploiting his love for his brother. He used Solo's silence to his advantage, never pushing too far, never giving too much. But this wasn't the Solo Sikoa Roman had installed at his right hand. This was something else. This was a man who had watched his family fall apart and decided to rebuild something new from the wreckage. Roman looked around the ring. Tanga. Hikuleo. Outsiders, yes, but family nonetheless. Their presence wasn't just threatening. It was insulting. These were men Roman had never recruited. Never acknowledged. And now they stood beside Solo, not behind him. That was the dagger. Roman had always been the center of the family. The sun around which all the stars rotated. Now, for the first time, he wasn't the gravitational force anymore. He was an intruder. The confrontation didn't end in violence. Roman didn't attack. Solo didn't charge. There were no chairs, no surprise punches, no spears. Instead, Roman did something more telling. He turned and walked away. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. He knew what had just happened. The look on his face as he exited the ring said everything. Control was no longer his. He had returned expecting to restore order. But the kingdom didn't want a ruler anymore. It had already found one. There are moments in wrestling that go beyond the script, moments when fiction bleeds into something real, something heavier than just promos and title belts. Solo Sikoa's response to Roman Reigns was one of those moments. It didn't need shouting. It didn't need violence. It just needed 7 words. I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting. That was it. No long explanation. No emotional monologue. No camera mugging. Just a man standing still in the center of the ring, delivering a sentence that told an entire story. To understand the weight of that response, you have to understand Solo. Solo Sikoa came into WWE as the younger brother of the Usos. His debut was quiet. No massive marketing push. No big moment. Just a surprise arrival at Clash at the Castle in 2022, helping Roman retain his title against Drew McIntyre in front of a stunned UK crowd. From the start, Solo was painted as the quiet enforcer. The one who didn't smile. The one who didn't speak much. He wasn't the jokester like Jimmy. He wasn't emotionally conflicted like Jay. He wasn't slick-talking like Sammy or manipulative like Heyman. He was deliberate. Dangerous. Controlled. That silence became his identity. He became the one who never questioned Roman. The loyal younger cousin. The final wall of defense. The last line of loyalty. For months, that role served him. He destroyed opponents without hesitation. Delivered Samoan spikes like they were punctuation marks. Always the muscle. Always the weapon. But what happens when the weapon starts thinking for itself? Because silence doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes silence is observation. And Solo was always watching. He saw Roman punish his brothers into obedience. He saw Sammy win the crowd and lose everything. He saw Heyman whispering poison into everyone's ear. He saw the cracks before most people did. And still, he waited. Waited for Roman to fix it. Waited for the family to come back together. Waited for someone to make it right. And then he stopped waiting. That sentence, "I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting," isn't just a retort. It's an indictment. It's a list of grievances condensed into one line. It means, I remember everything you did. I remember the way you talked down to my brothers. I remember how you made us bleed for you. I remember how you let everything fall apart. It means, I gave you time. I gave you my silence. And you wasted both. It's not anger. It's not rebellion. It's rejection. And that's what makes Solo dangerous. He isn't driven by rage. He's driven by clarity. He's not out of control, he's finally in it. That distinction matters. Because Roman Reigns built his empire on emotion. He manipulated people by exploiting their need to belong. He turned love into leverage. He broke his cousins not with fists, but with expectations. He weaponized tradition and bent loyalty into submission. Solo's rebellion doesn't come from hurt. It comes from detachment. He isn't fighting for revenge. He's fighting for control. And that makes him even more terrifying. Because he's not trying to prove something. He already knows who he is. When Solo stood in that ring and looked Roman in the eye, there was no desperation. No pleading. No bravado. He didn't need Roman's validation. He didn't care about the titles Roman held. He didn't need to raise his voice. He just needed to tell the truth. He stopped waiting. And Roman knew exactly what that meant. Roman thrives in conflict. He dominates when people fight back. It gives him a reason to punish. A reason to tighten his grip. But when someone refuses to play the game? When someone stops engaging? That's when Roman loses control. Solo is the first person in the family to look at Roman and see a man, not a king. He doesn't care about the throne. He's not interested in ceremony. He's not seeking a blessing. He's already made his move. And he didn't need permission. That's what makes that line echo so loudly through the WWE universe. Because we all know what it feels like to wait. To wait for someone to change. To wait for leadership to return. To wait for a broken system to fix itself. And then one day, we stop. Solo represents that moment for the Bloodline. He didn't throw the first punch. He just stopped holding back. And now that he's made that decision, there's no turning back. The shift is already happening. Since Night of Champions, Solo has operated with surgical precision. No wasted motion. No unnecessary promos. He's not trying to sell you on his rise. He's just rising. Tangaloa and Hikuleo didn't arrive with fanfare. They weren't introduced in a grand segment. They simply arrived, did damage, and stood beside Solo. That's how he leads. With action. With clarity. With intent. And when Roman returned, Solo didn't bow. He didn't kneel. He didn't raise the title in defiance. He just said what needed to be said. And Roman, for the first time, had no answer. Because what can you say to someone who's not waiting anymore? Not for approval. Not for direction. Not for forgiveness. Solo Sikoa is done waiting. And now? Everyone else has to catch up. The arrival of Jacob Fatu in WWE was supposed to be a game-changer. And it was, but not in the way anyone expected. Fans had long speculated about when, not if, Fatu would join WWE. A former MLW World Heavyweight Champion and one of the most fearsome wrestlers in North America, Fatu didn't just bring power, he brought presence. And presence is everything in wrestling. When his signing was finally confirmed, the internet blew up. Jacob Fatu wasn't just another Anoa'i cousin. He was the enforcer in the wrestling underground. A name whispered with respect in locker rooms across the world. His performances in MLW were relentless, brutal, and unflinching. He didn't wrestle. He attacked. His matches were wars. His promos were raw. His charisma? Unfiltered chaos. So when he debuted in WWE, the stage was set for something massive. And what a debut it was. He stepped into Night of Champions with the swagger of a veteran and the aura of a monster. The camera didn't just follow him, it struggled to keep up. The crowd reaction was a strange mix of curiosity and intimidation. Hardcore fans knew what was coming. Casual fans had no idea they were witnessing the arrival of a human hurricane. The match against Solo Sikoa was supposed to be a family affair, violent, yes, but contained within the circle. Two cousins. Two legacies. A passing of the torch or a reinforcement of the current power structure. It turned into something else entirely. Fatu dominated early. His style was fast and heavy, like a freight train at full speed. He hit Solo with everything. Clotheslines, super kicks, that incredible moonsault off the top rope. The man moved like someone half his size and twice as angry. But just as the crowd began to rally behind him, the ambush hit. Tangaloa. Then Hikuleo. And in that moment, the narrative flipped. Jacob Fatu went from dangerous debutante to sacrificial lamb. He didn't just lose, he was erased. That wasn't just storytelling. It was a signal. Fatu wasn't being buried. He was being set up as the catalyst. Because for Solo Sikoa to truly rise, someone had to fall. And not just anyone. Someone powerful. Someone legitimate. Someone whose defeat would force the audience to take Solo seriously, not just as an enforcer or a rogue cousin, but as a kingmaker. That someone was Jacob Fatu. In that loss, Fatu did more for Solo's credibility than any promo ever could. And that's why his role matters. He's not just a character. He's the line between the old bloodline and the new one. Before Fatu, Solo's violence was reactive, he stepped in when Roman needed him. After Fatu, Solo's violence became proactive. Strategic. Calculated. And most importantly, intentional. But Fatu's role isn't finished. That match didn't end his story. It started it. Because no one lays down for an ambush and disappears, not someone like Fatu. He's a storm waiting to circle back. And when he returns, he will. It won't be as a hopeful member of the bloodline. It'll be as a vengeance machine. What happened at Night of Champions wasn't a misfire. It was a spark. Jacob Fatu didn't lose. He ignited the war. When Tangaloa and Hikuleo stormed the ring at Night of Champions, most of the WWE universe reacted with shock. Not just because of their interference, but because of what their presence meant. To the untrained eye, they might have seemed like random muscle. Two big guys showing up to help Solo Sikoa secure a title. But to those who knew their history, those who understood the tangled, tribal roots of the Anoa'i dynasty, this wasn't a simple run-in. This was a declaration. Let's break it down. Tanga Loa and Hikuleo aren't just tag team specialists. They're not rookies from NXT or enhancement talent from the Performance Center. These are established, battle-tested warriors from across the Pacific, stars in Japan, veterans of Bullet Club, and members of the wider Samoan wrestling lineage. They weren't made by WWE. They were invited in. That matters. Let's start with Tanga Loa. The son of Haku, one of the toughest, most respected men to ever set foot in a wrestling ring, Tanga has wrestled across multiple promotions. He's known for his grit, his power, and his unwavering loyalty to his family. In NJPW, he made his name alongside his brother Tama Tonga as part of the Gorillas of Destiny, one of the most feared tag teams in the world. His legacy isn't just one of blood. It's one of dominance. Then there's Hikuleo. You can't miss him, he's massive. At nearly 7 feet tall and built like a tank, Hikuleo brings an imposing presence wherever he goes. But he's more than just size. He's methodical. Precise. A walking problem. Another son of Haku, Hikuleo is also a product of Japan's hardest hitting system. He doesn't waste motion. When he attacks, it's with purpose. So when these two showed up beside Solo Sikoa, the implications were immediate. This isn't just a faction. It's a coup. Roman Reigns may have built his bloodline within WWE. He may have surrounded himself with the Usos, Paul Heyman, and Solo Sikoa. But the Anoa'i family is much bigger than Roman's inner circle. It stretches far beyond the WWE universe. Across the Pacific Ocean. Into New Japan Pro Wrestling. Into the independent circuit. Into promotions built on grit, violence, and tribal pride. And now, Solo has reached across those boundaries. He's formed something Roman never did. A cross-promotional alliance that isn't bound by WWE's rules. That's not filtered through Heyman. That doesn't need approval from Stamford. This is a different kind of bloodline. It's global. And it's real. Because when Solo brought in Tanga Loa and Hikuleo, he wasn't just getting backup. He was restoring balance. Roman kept the bloodline close, tighter than tight. That was part of his strength. But it was also his flaw. He isolated. He manipulated. He used tradition to keep others out, even those with just as much claim to the throne. And Solo? He opened the gates. That's what shook the locker room after Night of Champions. Not just that Solo won. Not just that Roman had been challenged. But that the challenge came with new blood Roman had no control over. WWE veterans knew what this meant. This wasn't just a storyline development. This was a geopolitical shift in the world of wrestling. The doors between promotions had already begun to open in recent years. Forbidden doors, they called them. But now, those doors weren't just opening for one-off matches. They were being kicked in by family. Let's not forget, Hikuleo and Tanga Loa have history with Tama Tonga, their brother, who also happens to be a decorated wrestler in NJPW. And Tama Tonga? He's had history with Roman's crew too, namely through Bullet Club and New Japan Turf Wars. The factions may be fictional, but the loyalty is real. These men fight for pride and identity in the ring. They represent more than themselves. By aligning with Solo, Tanga and Hikuleo made a choice. They didn't side with the WWE Golden Boy. They sided with the cousin left waiting in silence. And that says everything. This also reframes Solo's strategy. He's not recruiting yes men. He's not building a faction around convenience. He's forming something based on heritage, not hierarchy. Roman chose his soldiers based on control. Solo is choosing them based on conviction. And that's why this alliance hits different. There's no merch. No logo. No catchphrases. Just action. That's how these men operate. That's how they've always operated. Tanga and Hikuleo didn't come to cut promos. They came to shift the power structure. And they've already started. In the weeks following Night of Champions, whispers began circulating backstage. Some said more family members could be coming. There are plenty to choose from: Tama Tonga, Jacob Fatu, seeking revenge, even external allies like Bad Luck Fail or members of the NJPW alumni circle. If Solo is building a dynasty of his own, the foundation has already been laid. And if Roman wants to respond, he'll have to dig deep. Because this isn't just about titles anymore. It's about blood. About loyalty. About who controls the future of the Anoa'i legacy. Roman built the first version of the Bloodline. But Solo? Solo might be building the last. For over 3 years, Roman Reigns was the unchallenged, undisputed, and unbothered king of WWE. The tribal chief. The head of the table. He didn't just hold titles, he held court. And every show, every promo, every match revolved around his presence, even when he wasn't physically there. But now? That crown is slipping. Not because someone beat him clean in the middle of the ring. Not because he lost his titles. But because the thing that made Roman Reigns untouchable, his control over the Bloodline, has fractured. And in WWE, when your empire begins to fall, it doesn't crumble all at once. It splits. Slowly. Quietly. Until it's too late. This is where Roman finds himself now. Cracks in the crown. And the weight is catching up to him. Let's rewind for a moment. Roman's rise didn't begin with dominance. It began with rejection. The fans didn't want him. WWE tried to push him as a heroic babyface, but the audience wasn't buying it. For years, Roman was booed not because he was hated, but because he felt manufactured. Forced. Then 2020 changed everything. Roman returned at SummerSlam with a new edge, aligned with Paul Heyman, and reinvented himself as a heel. He became the tribal chief, not a hero, not a villain, but something in between. Cold. Calculated. Unforgiving. He demanded acknowledgement, not applause. And for the first time, the audience leaned in. Because it felt real. Roman's dominance over WWE since then hasn't been just about match results. It's been psychological. He's beaten everyone because he made them question themselves before the bell even rang. His promos cut deep. His silence said more than 10-page scripts ever could. His facial expressions told stories better than most full feuds. But this version of Roman? It had one requirement: complete control. That was the foundation. And that's what's breaking now. Roman didn't just hold the Universal Championship. He held the family together by force. Jey Uso resisted. Roman broke him. Jimmy doubted. Roman silenced him. Sami tried to infiltrate. Roman welcomed him, then turned on him. Every crack in the system was fixed with manipulation and dominance. Until Solo Sikoa showed up. At first, Solo was Roman's greatest gift. The enforcer Roman didn't ask for, but needed. Quiet. Ruthless. Reliable. He handled the messes Roman couldn't touch. He took out threats without hesitation. He was the ultimate insurance policy. And Roman never realized that Solo wasn't just watching his enemies. He was watching him. That's the crack Roman didn't see coming. Because Roman's system was built on the assumption that everyone needed him. That no one could function without his direction. And for a while, he was right. He conditioned his family to believe he was the key to everything. The fame, the money, the respect. He made them believe their rise was tied to his. But Solo never fully bought in. He didn't speak often. He didn't challenge orders. But he also never worshipped Roman the way others did. He stood beside him, not beneath him. That subtle difference? It was everything. Roman's legacy depends on obedience. Solo's rebellion is a threat not just to Roman's power, but to his identity. Because if Solo can succeed without him, if he can build something stronger, leaner, and more dangerous, then everything Roman preached for 3 years becomes a lie. And Roman knows it. That's why he didn't fight Solo at Night of Champions. He didn't interrupt the match. He didn't attack afterward. He just stood there and asked one question: you think that title makes you the head of this family? But the truth is, he already knew the answer. He just didn't want to say it out loud. Roman's greatest fear isn't losing the titles. It's losing the narrative. And right now, that narrative is slipping away. The fans feel it too. Every time Roman appears now, there's a little less awe. A little more doubt. He still gets the big reactions. The big entrances. The big camera angles. But something's different. He's not invincible anymore. Because dominance has a shelf life. Eventually, people stop being afraid. And the minute fear disappears, power follows. Roman spent years telling us he was the source of power. Solo just proved that's no longer true. And here's the part that hurts most for Roman: he didn't lose it all in a match. He lost it in a moment. 7 words. I didn't forget. I just stopped waiting. That sentence did more damage than any spear or chair shot. Because it reminded Roman that power doesn't stay still. If you don't evolve, someone will evolve past you. And that's exactly what's happening. The question now isn't can Roman recover? It's can Roman adapt? Because what's coming isn't a challenge. It's a replacement. Solo isn't coming for the belt. He's coming for the spot. And Roman? He's running out of answers.